All right. So thank you for the lovely introduction, Shihui. And a little bit about myself. Part of the work that we do is is actually like creating all these cute characters that you see in the background and what you see on the main slide here as well. So part of what we do is like we create and illustrate like characters. We actually train people with disabilities to do the illustrations, and we like collaborate with them on like creating our like products and merchandise that we sell on our online store. So yeah, so I'll hand it over to Samantha from Little Pivotal. And yeah, I'm pretty curious about, why they pick these characters as well. So on to you.
Thank you, Amin. All right. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. So my character, I chose this rabbit with the carrot and the carrot cake because at the core of it, I really, really love carrot cakes. Like there is one near my place that they only sell white ones and it's very crispy. So that's me when I chose the character. But the other question that Shihui actually posted to us when we chose our avatar was why do you choose this character and how does it represent the work we do? And it resonated a lot with me because the word care is the central of our organization. So at Little Pivotal, right, what we do is we work with young children from primary school, 6 to 12 years old, and getting them to see actually what do they do and what do they care about. And from there, right, we help them see that with that care you have, how can you spread this care through leadership, through the way you interact with people. And that's really getting them to rediscover about themselves and then building their own skill sets such that they become leaders, either through self-leadership or team leadership at their own young age. Yeah, so that is what Little Pivotal does. And going back, we see ourselves as a social enterprise really because with getting the students to look at what they're interested in and expand their care, it goes back to how they can contribute to society and how they can make their own little pivotal impacts in their own way. So like pun intended. All right, so I'm gonna hand it over to Joel to share more why he chose the penguin. Joel.
Okay, hi. My name is Joel and I run an organization called Upraise. To be honest, the main reason why I chose it is because I think it's very cute and because I think the pun is very funny. Only have eyes for you. But on a side note, I actually really like durian, those durian's eye shave, that Pookie's favorite. Okay. And I can't really find a reason why it relates to the work I do. But what I do at Upraise is that I'm a life coach for youth. I serve the mainstream kind of youth, but I also have a passion to work with youth at risk. And I find that sometimes resources are not always available or they may not have that access or availability. And this is why I do the work I do, to reach out to these people that needs this kind of services. Yeah. So with that, I pass the time to Fannie.
Thanks, Joel. Okay, I really like these characters. So thank you, Amin, for letting us use this, being so kind. So similar to Amin, I also drink teh siu tai, teh tarik, a bit too much actually, not very healthy lah. But it's so I like this character because I drink the tea, but also I think that it's like when you pull tea, there's a right amount of balance. I lead an organization, a charity organization called Daughters of Tomorrow. And with that, we facilitate livelihood opportunities for low-income women into jobs that are accessible and sustainable. So I work with employers as well. I work with corporate partners, different stakeholders, and really it is a balancing act because at one side I'm advocating for women, on the other side I'm trying to create win-win for employers, and of course, with whichever other stakeholders that are out there. So that's me. Back to you, Shihui.
Fannie, I think you are like the teh tarik sloth also because you can juggle many things at the same time. I think that's probably a characteristic of all four of you. So the four of you touch a little bit on the type of organization that you come from. Amin mentioned that Artably is a social enterprise, and I think Samantha said the same, and Fannie said that she runs a charity. Could you share a little bit about what is your organization and why is it this particular type? So I'm asking this because one of the participants actually asked, huh, charity, social enterprise, actually what's the difference? Nobody has ever explained that to me properly before. And I don't think that our participants are looking for very technical or legal kind of explanation, but probably help them understand, oh, why did you make your organization a social enterprise? Or if your organization went through a journey, like you started as a community initiative, then you became a ground up, then you became a social enterprise, it's also helpful for you to share with them. Okay, I asked a very chim question. Everybody is loading, loading. So I think if it helps, I can say a little bit about Common Ground. Common Ground is also set up as a social enterprise. And I think the reason why we did that is that one of the advantages of a social enterprise is that we are quite nimble. We can react very quickly and we don't have to worry as much about charity governance regulations. Not to say we voting who we anyhow, but I think what we appreciated about a social enterprise is the nimbleness and the agility to react. So I don't know who else from social enterprise resonates with that, and if you wanted to add your own experience too. Yeah, I think we are having some tech issues. Can we leave all the speakers unmuted? I promise we won't interrupt one another.
Okay, it's working. All right. I think I can just chime in. Where Little Pivotal is we actually have a group of companies. So there is Pivotal Learning, Pivotal Youth, and Little Pivotal. And we started off as a profit-making organization, wanting to go into schools to do youth work. And along the way, right, as we contribute and help leaders grow, somewhere one of our at CG actually. Through the networking sessions, we realized that actually whatever that Pivotal has been doing, right, actually checks the boxes of the social enterprise. So that's also where it mobilized us forward to go and check out what social enterprise is really about. And when we saw that, right, we realized that going back to how the company supports in creating programs, designing experiences, and all this thing with the intent of supporting youth to be better, that takes care of many pieces of the social objectives in Singapore. Yeah, so that's also why I think if whoever that's out there listening to this, right, you want to also see that looking at what you're doing, is it helping to achieve all these social objectives that social enterprises can set out to do? And if that is the case, right, then I think it's a little bit like a work backwards kind of method that's happening for us. And you might never know, through that you will realize that the work you do can become a social enterprise. So that was our own journey. Yeah.
Thanks, Samantha. Actually, when we were chatting in the earlier prep sessions, I mean, I really appreciated that you said actually start small lah. We also start very small first. Would you like to say a little bit more about that?
All right, sure. I'll be glad to share. So for me, it was a little bit different. It started out like more of like honing my craft or a personal hobby, I would say. So one of the things that I love doing since young was like, drawing, and then like I just come across like learning how to like illustrate in the computer. So that was like a self-discovery and also sort of like building my own, like I would say, creative confidence lah. Because I think back then I was that awkward little kid at the corner of the class who didn't have that, the drive to do well in school, perhaps. So I guess what that led on to was like, I built that confidence to like, to hone this like creative skill set, which was like in drawing and design. And then why we started out as a social enterprise, because like I really resonated with the message of like, how others, like I meet other students when I was like a trainer, and like, they didn't have that, they were facing the same thing, like they have self-esteem issues, they don't have that confidence. So However, then I was hoping that to bring that same spark that was like given to me, and share it with them. So I thought, like, starting out as a social enterprise, giving back to, I would say, the marginalized community, was meaningful work. So which is why, like, I initiated this as a SE. Yeah. So I mean, like, what could be more meaningful than doing good work, I guess. Yeah, at that point of time. Yes. So that's my story.
Thanks, Amin. And I think what is really cool in Singapore is that you can do good work in so many different ways now. Traditionally, classically, people think do good work equals charity. And we're really glad that Fannie is here with us to share her experience. But I think what Sam, Joel, and Amin can also say a little bit more about later is what are all the other ways. But let's come back to Fannie. Fannie, how does being in a charity allow you to do, as Amin says, this good work to support the communities you care about, and in this case, women?
Yeah, funny story. We started out as a social enterprise, actually. So we pivoted, borrowing Samantha's organization's name, right? We pivoted to becoming a charity at some point. So the founder, when she started it, Carrie, she actually, saw the situation in India where there was, infanticide for baby girls. Then, she kind of supported the mothers there through bringing their handmade products to Singapore to sell. Then of course there were a few questions that were posed to her after doing this work for a period of time. They people asking her things like, why are you not helping your own people in your own backyard, who needs help, the mothers? And the other thing that was said was, is it scalable, the model that you are doing? Right. So after, I think, pondering and thinking and also discovering about the poverty situation. I mean, we don't have a poverty line in Singapore, no official one anyway, but they are like 20, I don't know, maybe now 25, 28,000 people on financial assistance, medium to short-term financial assistance. Okay, if you plus the long-term one, there's even more than that, the bigger number. So there is this group of invisible poor in Singapore. And when she discovered that, then the decision was to turn it into a charity. Then we can find more employers, the businesses, the SME tauques, to hire these women. And that was the model that we went from there. And we became IPC a couple of years after that.
Congrats. So I think
yes, it was a white hair endeavor to become IPC. I mean, if you look at Carrie's hair, it's really during that time, the IPC application period. I'm starting to get a few of my own, but yeah, it's quite interesting journey so far for us. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the very important bits, and I don't want to understate this, is that the charities in Singapore are held by a very strict accountability standard. And I think that's part of the everyday work of people who work in charities. So we can go more into that when we speak about the challenges later. But many of the participants are super curious about, so what is your day-to-day experience like? What is so you work in charity, SE, you're out. So what is the most unexpected or unusual thing you find yourself doing on any given day?
So this week is very funny for me because this week I was in a few days of media shoot. Then sometimes I wonder to myself, like, what job am I doing? Because, I entered this space wanting to really do something on the ground, but it's different, I suppose, because my role requires me to like really teh tarik lah, really pull different things. There's the getting word out, creating awareness. So there's the corporate functions of marketing, finance, stuff like that, the sustainability of the organization. Yeah, so my role, my day-to-day is quite different. But a lot of actually, like you said, Shihui, because it's governed by both the Company Act and the Charity Act, there are quite stringent requirements around it. And as we grow larger, there's a lot more things that we need to manage besides doing the work itself. Yeah, but my colleagues have it a bit more fun. So I try to remind them, I say, it's okay, guys, you'll do fun as in not fun. I mean, we are passionate about the groundwork that we do. So I say, I'll do the Excel sheets and the forms and the renewal of IPC and all this administrative stuff. Then you guys can do the work, the actual work, and yeah, that's how we've been rolling around now.
Yeah, thanks, Fanny. I guess the actual work is always very exciting. And by that, we mean when you meet with the woman, when they are in the empowerment workshops, when they successfully get matched by Dot with employers, I think that's really very meaningful. So,
Yeah. I'm very
Joel-
excited when I get to sometimes. So I actually sometimes do still volunteer, and when I don't have to do my stuff, I'll just like when I have time, I'll go and become a childminder. So in my office space, if you go to my room, that doubles up as a childminding space. You will see children books and toys. Yeah, Samantha, you can come and have a look at. It's probably not as child safe lah, but still I have books, balls, and minion toys and all that lah. So that's my fun interactions with the people. Sorry, you were saying to Joel.
Actually, Fanny, you raise a really important point. So the people in the audience might be curious, why do you have a child minding space in Dot? Do you want to say a little bit more about why that's important for the empowerment workshops?
Sure. Because it is a practical solution to lowering barriers for women to come to our courses. Because majority of them being mothers, literally majority are mothers, and a good almost half are single mothers. We didn't want it to become like because I have to take care of my children, I can't make it. So we always say, come with your children, bring your kids. So yeah, if on Friday, now we actually have an ongoing course. So on Friday nights, those kids will be attending the Dot workshops. In the daytime is little pivotal, but the nighttime ones, the one roaming around is actually the Dot women's kids.
Yeah, Fanny, you raise a super important point. Whether you are a charity or whether you are a social enterprise, you have to be very practical about what your community needs. And at the same time, you also have to juggle that with what are the resources and the bandwidth that your own organization has. At this point, I want to invite Joel or Amin to speak up because both of them, for a long time, they are one-man shows. So that's like, wow, macam more balls to juggle, right? You have to serve your community, you have to think about reaching out to stakeholders, then you have to manage your own bandwidth and your sense of health. Then you burn out already, then you cannot help people know how like that. So, Joel, Amin, what have you got to say about this?
Okay, I can share first. I'm afraid that I don't really have a good answer for this because it is really a day-to-day struggle. On a related note, it was difficult for me to decide whether I'm a social enterprise or the ground up also. To explain this, I actually run a few maybe different businesses. I'm a badminton coach as well, and then I'm a youth life coach. So what I'm passionate about is to serve the disadvantaged youth. And usually the clients that need my services are those that can't afford it. And if I really, really want to do it, I have to find that money somewhere else, then kind of like channel my own time and energy to do the work that I'm really passionate about. So social enterprise, ground up, actually I also don't know, it's quite hard to decide. Other than having to manage the whole business in terms of the social media, the business, I don't know what you call that, the progress of the business, and very, very, very difficult law, but thankfully I have a lot of friends that are chipping in and helping me. Actually, some of my clients have become my friends, and they do on my social media and stuff like that as well. Yeah. So coming back to the question, how tough is it? How to manage all these multiple hats? It's very tough. I really don't have an answer. What I can do, I do. Whatever help people offer, I take, and then I just make do with the situation and just make the best out of it, I guess.
Joel, I think what your attitude says about the way you approach the work is also that there is an openness, because some people might be thinking like, can ask for help, man? Ask for help equals I cannot manage everything. Is that okay? So what is quite real about the social enterprise and grown-up journey is that everyone in the space is constantly learning. We understand that we cannot do everything and we need partners. And sometimes it is about convincing the partners that, hey, this unusual thing we want to try could be helpful for you. I mean, when you have to pitch to people and tell people like, hey, I teach people use PowerPoint, make characters, then they're like, huh? So how was that journey like for you?
Oh boy, yeah. So I think like that is something that we are like sort of trying to figure out as well. I mean, like most people see like the medium or the tool that we use is like, oh, we use PowerPoint to like do slides or presentations. So when like I introduce myself like, hey, when I like create these characters and like I tell them that we use PowerPoint to do it, I think it raises a lot of like I think curiosity, like why use PowerPoint? Like, isn't that like meant to be used for like I would say like presentations and stuff? But when I tell them, like when I share with them, like, you know, it's accessibility and like how people like they can't really draw, like the kids or the students that I come across with, I think we've come to the page where, you know, it's all like iPad, so they swipe here, swipe there. So I still think like, to me, like, you know, having like basic ICT skills is pretty important. Yeah. So I think that was one of the things that like when we like conveyed to like teachers or when we run like school programs, that is what I wanted to like share lah. Like, you know, it's they can build their confidence, or they can, you know, use PowerPoint for something else a little bit more in a more creative way. Yeah. And then what else? I think yeah, I think that's about it for me.
Thanks, Amin. I think what is very cool about the four of you is that the four of you, I don't know if you have noticed this common thread, right? Address some very important aspects in Singapore. So Little Pivotal comes from the space of education, and that's where Joel and also Artably sits. And Dot focuses on employment. So did yours strike on this goal formula right from the start? Or what are some of the hard lessons that you learn from experience one? Actually, the business model or the value proposition, not so clear from the start one, but you learn some really hard lessons from your experience of doing this work that allowed you to really sharpen the way you talk about how you serve the community now.
I think I answered mine early. I mean, through the first question earlier, that we didn't strike gold from the start lah. We did the entrepreneurship pathway where it's selling the merchandises from the women, but we found that it was very hard to make a living. And of course, with the globalized economy and what's not, you know, like shipping, Taobao and Lazada or whatever, you know, the digital economy making things borderless. It increases the competition, and so it was very hard to go via that mode, which is why the current employment model. Having said that, I don't think we have given it up altogether. Actually, two of our volunteers, we talked to them about this because we found that the women from, I mean, every pathway will have different people interested to do, you know, to take it up. And so we found that some women are still interested in entrepreneurship. So we told we had a coffee with two volunteers from Dot, and then they were interested to take it out and say, oh, fine, great. Why don't you spin it off? And you do, you know, mentor the women and work with them, help them to build their businesses. So this organization now today is called Rise Above. And so we work with them and they do that work. While, yeah, we refer women to them, and then, yeah, they cross refer and stuff like that.
Thanks, Fannie. I think what you said earlier was really important, that every pathway will have people interested in that. Sam, I remember when we were chatting about Little Pivotal, right? You talked about how success stories is like a bit classical in Singapore, like, wow, this person then suddenly failed, then wow, turning point. But how was it like for you? You know, what was your experience with Little Pivotal?
I think what's interesting is I started off supporting my boss when I was in just after A levels, and that was the period where people see external programs in school as bonding, team building, and things like that, until we made a stand to say, actually, we want leadership to be something that we can offer. Because actually, the truth is, in schools, right, teachers are very stretched. They may not have that bandwidth to be supporting the youth with the core content, because they will just do a lot of teachable moments. So that's also where, as I did my facilitation work with my current boss, then he offered me to say, do you want to open up something that you're interested in, which is in the whole area of children? And I just took on the opportunity. And at that point in time, right, there was a lot of self-doubt question to say that actually, can I succeed or not? So going back, Shihui, your point, right, in the previous conversation we had, there was this very stuck belief that actually, in order to be successful in Singapore, I first need to have like a very cham story. Because like the model I see online and everywhere is like Adam Khoo has a certain pitfall, and then he has a turning point, and then somebody somewhere else also has that, and even like Facebook, like all these common things that we're using every day, right? They do have their own background story. Then I look at myself and I ask myself, actually, what is my story? And I realize I don't have that cham story. So then if I'm not cham, then can I define myself as successful? Because I didn't have a turning point. So that was also where, when I did one program with a group of poly students, they asked me, there's this activity called a hot seat moment, where they put the trainer on a hot seat and the youth get to ask us questions. So there I am sitting on the hot seat, 80 pairs of eyes looking at me. And then this student asked me, I say, Samantha, can you share with me what is your turning point in life? And that was the moment I got stuck and I couldn't answer the question. I remember myself shaking, and I chose to share on the spot to say that I actually have no turning point. And it just slapped me in the face to say that actually, do I really need a turning point to define myself as successful? And why not that actually, if things are going well, right, I can build on all these good foundations to do better. I don't need to have a very drama story to say that's my turning point. Yeah. So that hit me, and I just feel actually a lot of people around me, because of how social media has shined the spotlight on all these good stories that have turning points, right? Then they start diminishing themselves to say, actually, my story is not worth sharing. But I don't think that's the point. So if there is that whatever story you have, bring it with it for yourself, right? And then that's also how other people can borrow it, to build their own successes. Yeah.
It's kind of related to what Fannie said, that every pathway will have people interested, because there are so many different pathways to start doing social good in Singapore and to start creating social impact. It doesn't have to look and seem a particular way, and it also doesn't have a set pattern and trajectory, because in trying to meet the needs of the community, you have to be flexible and meet them where they are. So, I mean,
can I add on to Samantha's point? I think it's quite interesting, the idea of, like you said, sometimes it could be quite set what the narrative is for success. So a bit pricey, but anyway, I went to an interview for there's this book on what are successful people in Singapore. It was very funny. That publisher, when she interviewed me, right, she asked me, she's like, oh, so what are your successes in life? I've forgotten immediately. I just answered, oh, I have 3 children. Then after that, my colleague next to me, she's like, hey, what context, hey? I was like, oh, sorry, I immediately, because it just first thing just blurted out. I say, oh, I'm a mom to 3 kids. And I thought, to me, I'm like, hey, I'm quite successful, I feel like, hey, they're all in primary school years, they haven't killed me, I haven't killed them, very successful. So I guess the definition, I mean, even though the book has been published and really it has really people from government, the entertainment industry and all that, wow, really the kind of public figures out there, but I did ask myself, what is the definition of success? How did the publisher pick the people and all that? So I feel that it's all different. And so, don't just wanted to share this for you, Samantha. Yeah, you are a success in your own right.
Yeah, and it's so important what both of you are saying. For those of you who are listening, right, each of you can be meaningful to the community in the way that feels most authentic to you. And I think that's what we are all here to explore and figure out. And Fannie, I think it's so amazing that you remain very focused on the fact that you are also a mom. Like, in addition to your work identity, there are many identities that you hold outside. And it's also these outside identities that enrich what is the work that you can do at top, because you're a mom, you know what kids need, what mothers are worried about, and that really feeds into your work too.
It's hard to forget, Shihui. They're in my face every day. I'm just wondering when one of them will show up here now. But yeah.
Now there are many people to entertain them. Got Sam, got Joe, got Amin. Can.
Yeah, for sure. They are very happy to, come and say hi, and yeah. Thank you so much.
As we were talking about this, right, one of the things that a participant asked us earlier was, what are some of the challenges that you experience in doing the work of your organization? And I want to bring the spotlight back to Amin again, because we were chatting about how, you know, if you are always a one-man outfit, right? Then somebody offer you a big, exciting opportunity. Then what are you going to do about that? Amin.
Oh, okay. So I think like part of uh how do I answer this question?
Remember
Maybe,
the collaborative project that you were talking about, the scale very big, like
oh, right,
then
right.
how like this? Yeah.
Okay, great question. Okay, I think one good example that happened like pretty recently or maybe last year was this project that we were approached by like AIC and Yakun to like create like some kind of like characters for them. And then I think like part of it like they needed like about, it's like a number that wow, about they needed like 20,000 like badges, that kind of thing. So this was something that was like way beyond our capacity, because I think like at most we only like produce like what 100 200 of products at most, so it was more in a like in a smaller digit lah. So I think, and that at point of time I think it was during the COVID like lockdown, so like getting my like what they call this, my supplies, my what they call this, things that I have to get from my supplier was quite difficult lah. Yeah, so there were like a few challenges during that point of time, and also I had to like let go of my space over at Enabling Village at that point of time. We were doing like enrichment programs for children, so there was a lot of like letting go during. So I was like at a quite low point, I would say lah. Yeah. So but I was like sort of like trying to like figure out like, okay, what's the next step? What can we do apart from like doing like programs with schools, that kind of stuff. So that's when we started Artably and launched our online store, that kind of thing. So it like made me like more focused to like really launch this project. And I think like from the past experience of like doing like small flea markets, setting up the online store really helped me to like, you know, give that confidence to take up this like bigger project. Yeah, because it definitely requires a lot more resources or even capital on our part, which and what really helped was like, you know, speaking to my mentor, and like and also my partners, who happen to be like the people that I meet along this journey lah. I mean, like one of the things that I'm very grateful for, like especially when you like do your own thing, like the people that you meet along the way that are willing to like help you build your business or your social enterprise lah, because they could like, I would say, they want to support you as well. So I'm very grateful for that. So I think with that kind of like support, and it gave me the confidence to take this up, and like sort of like, you know, it was like a good 4-5 months project. And yeah, you could actually like go to like Yakun right now and like get the badges and stuff. And I think one of the challenges was like, because you're like working with one like a commercial SME and another is like a government agency, so it was like, wow, we are like stuck in between, like trying to like, you know, they want to like give out this message of like caregiving. So it was pretty interesting that how we could like link the two up through our characters. So an example, I actually put it aside. So this, oh, can see, you know, cannot see, right? Okay, yeah, never mind. But you guys can go Yakun and check it out. It's right there. So so like through our characters, like we created like them drinking the Yakun Kaya Toast, and then like behind the card there's like a message for caregivers, and then we use like puns and wordplay. So it's like how we like sort of like collaborated, and like everyone like had a piece of it into that final product. So I'm pretty proud of that lah. I definitely couldn't have done it without the support and the team behind this entire thing. So yeah, it was fun, but definitely something like once at the end of it, wow, very shocked feeling like, wow, I managed to pull this off and see it come to fruition. Yeah, because at the start, like, wow, can I really do this? Wow, I don't think so. Yeah, so that really helped lah. Yeah.
Yeah, for those of you who are curious, right, later go and check out the Artably web store, okay? Later we will provide a link in the chat. But I mean, you said two things that are very interesting that I would love to expand on with everyone here, which is you are working with a profit-making entity and you are also working with AIC, a government agency, and sometimes the objectives, don't always align. Then you're like the person in the middle trying to make it all work. For the rest of you, right, what are some of the ways that you had to relate to your stakeholders, whether as a charity or whether as a social enterprise? What are some things that these other stakeholders didn't understand about your work that you wish they would and you had to explain to them?
I think like one big assumption is we either do things, I wouldn't say for free lah, but I think in the beginning, yes. Oh, so you do this for free, but I think we've built up, like, I think that's why building a brand is also still very important. And telling people that you're just we still have to make a profit lah. Yeah, and it's just that we set aside part of our profits to like continue with our outreach. Yeah, so like how our business model works is that we sell our products, that kind of thing, and that sustains us to like run pro bono outreach programs for children. So and then, but that took a while to figure out, like, okay, how to sustain the business, but then still like do like the work that we do with our beneficiaries. So, and then I think, oh sorry, yeah, like what was the question again?
What are some of the ways that you relate to your stakeholders, and what are some things that you wish they understood about your work?
Oh yeah, lah. That we can still provide value in the work that we do lah. So I think there's a lot to do with like finding what's unique about what are the services and that we provide that is unique. So for us, it's like we have like our own original characters that we tell our stories from. So let's say like if you go to another like design studio, for example, yeah, they do like their logos, they do your like, I don't know, your name cards and pamphlets or websites for you. But our what makes us different from other like I would say other design studios is that we have our own set of characters, and like how they could tell they could like match their brand and tell their story through our characters. And yeah, I think having that unique I would say unique value proposition helps us to differentiate ourselves from other competitors, I would say. Yeah. And also I think when like the clients approach us, I think one of the things that why they come back to like support us is because they hear about the groundwork that we do as well, and like how like them supporting us also helps to support the community that we work closely with. So yeah, that has been something that that's the feedback that I receive of the clients, the organizations that we work with, why they come back to us and why they want to like support our work. Yeah, so I think that's the value that we also provide lah.
I want to come back to Joel, because Joel mentioned earlier that it's especially challenging because his stakeholder group, which are youths that come from less privileged backgrounds, are the people he would like to serve, but clearly they have less ability to pay for the services. So of course there is also the assumption that Amin mentioned earlier, hey, you do this for free, right? You coach people for free, right? You're helping youth, right? So Joel, how do you navigate that? Well, in progress, I know, but I think it's helpful for the participants to hear how you are navigating. I don't think it needs to be a perfect answer.
Yeah, so I'm thinking how to phrase this. So far, I think the best solution, right, is to earn money somewhere and then after that devote my time. at where I want to do, which is what I do with the badminton one. I say that's the best because that is the most within my control. I choose what I want to do with that time and that money. But there are also other ways, right? Whatever businesses that you are thinking about or whatever social causes that you're trying to tackle, there are actually a lot of government funds out there. There are also maybe supporting agencies that might be interested to partner with you or collaborate with you to do some of this work. But as I said, the difference is that when you partner with someone, then there's more conversation, negotiation, whether the values are aligned or maybe the expectations, whether they align or not, then that's another thing. So one very typical experience, I'm not saying this as a bad thing, right? But it just usually comes in a package like that. But if it's a government kind of grant, they usually look out for KPIs. Or there must be something like they can measure whether this program is successful, or some feel like it's whether the dollar is worth being spent on. But unfortunately, some of this work that I do, they can be very complex. If you talk about a youth at risk who have maybe had trauma for 15 years or 20 years, and the project is only 6 months, how much of that harm can I undo, or how much can I help this person recover in the 6 months when they have gone through that for 15, 20 years? How to measure that is going to be very tough. Yeah, so to summarize it, the best way is to earn the money somewhere else, have the autonomy to do whatever I want to do with it. Otherwise, you can find government grants and negotiate, have conversations and see where's the common space, middle ground, common ground that you can work on.
Shout out.
Yeah, Joel, I'd like to follow up with Joel's point on working with stakeholders. I think I agree with the things that you mentioned, having aligned values or principles, and it will have a lot more, if you want to go, have a collaboration, it will be a lot more work, sometimes joyful, but sometimes painful. So you've got to weigh out the pros and cons, whether it's worthwhile. But personally, for myself, I would limit a number of stakeholders. That means above a certain number, unless I really am so aligned with you. But otherwise, I think too many will really be a challenge. I feel. But the other thing is also be open to pull the plug if needed, or to pull out at any point in time. Not so much out of ego, but definitely check yourself. If it's out of ego, then consider it lah. But if it's not aligned to your principles, for example, I think be willing to do that. Nothing is wasted. I think if you continue on, it might be, it's almost like a marriage type of thing, better to stay single than to be married miserably to the wrong partner, right? So yeah, that's just a life thing thrown in there. But misconceptions that we have to, I have had to deal with. Somehow people expect, society expects people working in the charity sector. Now I'm throwing a very general statement here. There are exceptions, but society in general expects people working in charity sector to be quite altruistic. Therefore, it's as though we can live on air and love and very little money lah, which is not true. Singapore being the second richest city in the world, recently polled, right? I think we really need to understand that, hey, we all live in the same city, the cost of your yakun, yakun is the same as my cost. So while I work in a charity, doesn't mean I don't need to survive lah, right? Also, people prefer donating directly to beneficiaries. Well, to be honest, I used to have this kind of concept as well. I like to give to organizations that really, a lot of percentage goes to the beneficiaries, very little goes to, but you realize that, hey, because it's complex issues that we're dealing with, it's not that I can work myself out of a job and I can close down the charity. That would be very ideal for me, because most of my colleagues in Daughters of Tomorrow are from the corporate sector, actually. So, we'll be quite happy to actually fold up and go back to our corporate jobs. But unfortunately, that's not the reality. And so you realize, hey, we got to stay here for quite a bit. So that means to sustain the work, you've got to sustain the people doing the work. And lastly, may not sound very pretty, but ad hoc CSR projects are nice, not necessarily impactful to achieve the mission, at least not just DOT's mission, but really any mission, to better society. So we got to rethink that, and of course be able to communicate that quite tactfully to our partners. Yeah.
I think both you and Joel mentioned that the complex issues that you work on require long-term effort and commitment. So in this long amount of time that each of you have spent in your respective field of work and for your community, right? Does it ever get so difficult that you think about leaving, and what makes you stay?
All the time.
Real talk, Joel. I like this. Come, tell us.
Every time I see my friends in property earning big money and all that, I think to myself, why am I doing this? Yeah, and especially now that I have a daughter and a family, I do think about the money that I could earn, and I think why I'm doing this. From a very personal voice, I think my religion plays a part in what I do. I think this is where I'm supposed to be. But then from a more layman perspective, I think seeing the work that needs to be done, it's very hard to leave or to leave this industry altogether as well. Especially when I've seen some success, or I know that I am able to make a difference in this space. Yeah.
So let me just also be very, since Joel took the lead, I'm going to be very open, okay? My husband and I both work in non-profits. And then sometimes, right, the conversation is like, okay, more like I will joke him and I'll say, hey, maybe it's time you go into the corporate sector, because I just took on the role as ED, right? So I'm like, okay, I need to say, I just took on this station. So I said, you go lah, Then we're like, okay, maybe after 5 years I will go or something like that. He also be like, okay, take turns lah. Both of us also very, very patient, or like Joel say, maybe, it's like a calling to this station kind of thing. So it's like, we can't really simply leave, yeah, but we're like, okay, but the kids are growing up, they don't live on the same passion that, it would be nice if they had, but it's not that kind of conviction and passion, of course, because we are older and all that. So, it's very hard to expect children to sort of live on your faith, right? Like, or live on your convictions, just because you want to do good for community. Therefore, I cannot go for extra classes, coding classes, I'm interested in that way. And then my friends have this, I also like to have this. So there's a lot of that kind of struggle sometimes. It's very real lah. But what makes us stay? What makes me stay? I guess it's the meaning in the work. But there are times, and I remember this very vividly, when I wanted to draw $50 out of the ATM, I couldn't because it was below that amount, so I couldn't draw that out. And I'm like, but okay, a few more days, then salary will come in. But I'm like, yeah. It's quite tough lah. Those are the challenging moments. But we'll try to do it for as long as we can. That's why I spoke passionately and say, people in charity sector also need to eat lah. And that's the reason why, it came from there. My own experience and also looking at my own colleagues as well.
Joel, Fannie, thank you for being so real with us. I think what I'm learning from what both of you shared is that it is definitely difficult. In whatever cause or community you work with, there will be challenges. So it's very important to be clear about why you are staying and what makes it meaningful for you to stay. Sam, I want to come back to you because I think the education sector and working with young children is also very complex. There are big stakeholders in your space that you need to navigate. Do you ever think about leaving, and what makes you stay?
I think as they're sharing, right, it's very real, and I really can resonate with what Joel and Fannie is saying. But coming to the education part of it, right, in my own context, because I'm offered the opportunity and therefore a business owner, there actually really is no like, can I leave? Yeah, because it's on me and things like that. And I actually do question myself every time I am faced up with either the HOD or the principal and I get questioned, especially because I look young, right? I ask myself, what does it take for me to actually need like such that they can treat me seriously lah. Yeah, and those are the moments where I don't think it's about leaving the job, but wanting to get out of the meeting and have my boss front it instead. And each time round I finish something and I feel like I'm being shaken after that particular meeting, right? I go back and and just like pour it out to my colleagues. And that's also where they say each of it is an opportunity for you to educate your stakeholders. Yeah, and this whole piece about education also kind of like in Chinese is 磨练 lah. So it really trains me to get clearer and make my stand. And as I do this more, right, I start to see that actually the decision makers are the principals, the HOD, but the people I truly am working with are the teachers. And if the teachers buy what's going on and they see the value, right, eventually this will cascade to years of partnerships together, which then I feel that only then I see that actually what I do pay off. Yeah, so it's actually very true, because when I started a few years back, it's really from scratch. I need to find my own schools. I need to choose my partners, because there's only so much energy that we have, right? And when I do that, right, and they keep coming back, this is my 4th year, and they come back to me every single year to ask me to support them. And they say, actually, we believe in what you're doing. We will convince the principals and HODs for you. And that shows me that this partnership is where, if I make my stand, serve them and contribute, right, it will eventually show results lah. Yeah, and that's how other than saying that this is children work and it's important to impact children, I think the middle ground people, the teachers, are the ones that are holding the fort for me. So this is another conversation with Deborah, if you all know her from CG, right? She's saying that the people that you are working with are the ones that buy your story and the ones that fight for you in their own battlefield, so to say. Yeah, so I treat all these partners as people that are alongside with me on the journey. Yeah, so that's also the reason why it keeps me going, and say that actually every year the children change. Every year I work with different children, but the teachers are the ones who stay. So just going back to each of your own context, right? Who is the middle ground person that's journeying with you lah? Yeah, because the beneficiaries may be the one changing, but the ones that are doing the work together are the ones that that's gonna fight with you. Yeah.
Thanks, Sam. I mean, actually, earlier you mentioned that during the first COVID circuit breaker, you had to change your studio, you had to move. You know, did you ever think about stopping all this work that you're doing, and what made you stay?
Amin is muted. Oh, now he can. Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch you.
I mean, when you were faced with all the challenges during the circuit breaker last year, you mentioned earlier that you had to change studio, you had to move. So does it ever get so difficult that you think about leaving, and what makes you stay?
Yeah, I think that period was quite challenging, because I mean, like, we are all going through it the first time lah. I mean, like, never has such a pandemic happened before. So I think for me at least, I think when I first started out, like, it was really, we had my own set of challenges lah, like, how do I like run this, how do I manage the finances, that kind of thing. And then like once you like sort of like you build a team for a good like 3 years, and then like who believe in your vision, and like you will like figure out, okay, this is what we can do. We got like some tractions and some funds, that kind of thing. And then it's sort of like it all like almost all for nothing in that sense. Like, now that like for a good year, we cannot do programs with schools because of the nature of how we run things. It's very hands-on. So we did try to pivot for a bit, but I think it was extremely challenging at that point of time. Yeah. So I think emotionally, it was very difficult to tell my team or the people that I work with, like, this is what's happening. And then yeah, I mean, like, one of the consequences is that I have to like sort of like let them go lah. So, and how I had to like communicate to them was, I think it was the first for me lah. I mean, like, I never had prior experience to that. So yeah, so that was one. And then I think I was quite lost, like, okay, what is the next step from here? Do I like go find work, or do I like, start again, or that kind of thing. So I think like having a support system helps. So I plucked up some courage to like reach out to a couple of people, and slowly like try to like figure out, like what's the next step. So I think there was a lot of like reflection also, like, okay, what worked, what didn't work. And then now that, a little bit wiser, a little bit more experienced, it definitely helped me, like start up, like start again lah, to restart. And I think, I guess, like, I think whatever happened back then, I would say, like, I wouldn't say it's like I regret or anything like that. I think there were a lot of lessons that I learned, and I like apply it better now. Yeah. And then like I can manage things, and like, and I'm still like figuring things out, to be honest. Yeah, whether like this is truly what I want to do. However, I think what kept me grounded is like I still keep true to like what I personally want to do, like, which was like, creating illustrations and that kind of stuff. But yeah, and how I like still like work with my team, even though we are not we are we don't we are not I no longer employ them, but we work on an ad hoc project basis lah. So for example, like this Yakun project, like I like sort of like prepare all the things that needs to be like packed, and then like I send it over to their house, and then they do all the packing for me. And then like I still have them involved in our work processes lah. So I think that was quite fun in itself. Like, and then they will like come to me and say like, hey, your badges are like doing really well. A lot of people like them, that kind of thing. So I think it is good to hear this kind of thing lah. It really does help you to like, okay, there is validation in the work that we do. Yeah, I think that's something that I always struggled with, like, is our work really like legit? That kind of thing. Yeah, we use PowerPoint, like, yeah, people use Photoshop, people use like Procreate, all these tools, but I still think they are just like a tool for us to use lah. I think what's important for me at least is like, the work that we do with the beneficiaries. And I mean, like, they come to us and like they tell us that, they they like our work. So I think that's good enough for me at least.
Thanks, Amin. I want to come back to something that you said earlier, which is all of us had to go through lockdown for the very first time. How did COVID change the way you work with your community? And how did you learn and adapt along the way? For the audiences that are still with us, I know we have been chatting amongst ourselves, but we would also love to hear your questions. So if you feel like you have any questions, please leave it in the Zoom chat, or you can privately message me if you're paiseh. But if you want us to see your face and hear your voice, you can also unmute yourself and put on your video. So we would love to hear from you. But in the meantime, let's come back to how has COVID impacted you and your work and your communities?
I think I can jump in. I echo what Amin shared earlier during this session, right? That when COVID hit us, because government actually takes care of children very well. So that also means that when it comes to primary school, right, it is the first to go. Yeah, so they close it down. Like no vendors are allowed into school. So I mean, CCA instructors, all that also they cannot do, and everything it's just a standstill. And it was a good 6 months. Yeah. Then because we have the other company, which is Pivotal U, so actually MOE just closed, like everybody just cannot enter schools at that point in time. And we saw ourselves using that 6 months to do backlogs, to recalibrate, to re-strategize. And it also helped us shift our mindset, because what we do is experiential learning and facilitation, and we truly believe in the the beauty of being face to face and the magic they can create when we are in each other's presence. So when we go online, we are constantly challenged with the idea of, can this be done? Can this be done? Can this be done? We lose the human touch. Is it still as effective? And one biggest this sound that's going on, right, is that many people, or even I would say teachers, like in my context, believe that online is easier and therefore don't need to be as expensive. So when we first did our online program, we pivoted online and we actually are doing what we used to do face-to-face, but now online, which means we use the same amount of manpower to create the same experience, but just different modality, right? The teacher can come back to us, say, it's just online, you just need to have one person turn on the Zoom and then you'll just screen something, then they can play already. Can you charge it cheaper? Then I'm like, it doesn't work this way. If you want the same learning, you want the same objective, your specs and requirements are the same, then why are you requesting at this level, right? Yeah, and it really took us immense effort and rebuilding that narrative, right, to educate them to say, actually, this is not. And it came to a point, right, where we really need to bite the bullet and say, okay, we're going to give you preview sessions. You come for your preview session and see it for yourself, experience it for yourself. And that's how we started shifting, like I would say one teacher at a time, or one school at a time, to have them see. And that is where from May 2020 onwards, right, we spin off and started to be ahead at edge when it comes to online programs. Yeah, and then my boss actually just ran programs to educate teachers and other vendors or competitors, right, to say, actually, let's use this opportunity to level up the industry together. So I would say COVID on the surface is what shot us down, but it's also what got us back up to explore new avenues to actually challenge ourselves. So one of the leadership frameworks we use is the leadership challenge, if you have heard before, is by Kuza and Posner, and one of it is challenge the process. And I thought COVID gave us the opportunity to challenge the process a lot. Yeah, that was our COVID story.
Okay, they never pay me to say this, right? But I attended one of their online program, right? Wow, and they're really good, eh? So I took some of their program, right, to do my online badminton classes. Yeah, so I was very impressed with what they could achieve on online lesson. Solid.
Yeah, I think like what Sam said, sometimes it is about letting the important stakeholders experience your work. Then they go away with a deeper understanding about how much commitment and effort and skill it takes to do what you do. Would anybody else want to talk a little bit about how COVID has impacted the way you have to do your work or work with your communities?
COVID has made me very tired. I think the business continuity plan is a continual planning process. I've never done so many strategy plannings and business continuity to the point it's like, oh my goodness, this is so ridiculous. You know, when they were the recent one, they say they want to do it in 2 phases. I'm like, oh my God, can we not do 2 phases? Can we just do 1 phase? Because there's so many things to plan, you know, the logistics, the teams part. Wow. To be honest, so if we talk about the community that we work with, it is still a challenge, I must say, because I mentioned that many of the women, Daughters of Tomorrow, work with are low-income mothers, and with that, caregiving is one of the main responsibility. In at least, you know, they take it up upon themselves, and therefore it affects employment very much. And so I must say that we are still at DOT, we are still very challenged to get back into our previous placement grooves, placement KPIs, so to speak, because the disruptions and the home-based learning and, you know, children falling sick, and, you know, nowadays, even my own kid, a little bit of mucus also teacher sent back already. It's like, wow, cannot have any symptom sign whatsoever, you know. Yeah, so it's a crazy time. Yeah, and we had to do things that we weren't doing before. Previously, DOT focuses on employment, right? Just getting them into a job, preparing them. And the most that we did for so-called quote-unquote financial handout was easy link top-up and phone top-up, so that they are able to go for interviews, remain contactable, can, you know, for the first month or so in employment, they can, go without disruptions. But turn COVID, I think we started, the government did roll out measures, but it requires certain processing. So we get people writing in saying things like, oh, I applied, it will take a week or two, but I don't have food anymore. So this is, but even a charity like because we have a board, we've got processors as well. So I think what I did was that I immediately did my own fundraising among friends and family. So while the agency gets our processors together, a little bit faster than government, but still, we had to take time, so that people don't siphon funds out of our charities, So there are certain things that we've got to oblige to. But yeah, friends and family is like, hey, come on, guys, let's do our part. All give money. I'm very good. Yeah, I am very thick skinned, so I always go to ask people money. My sister that lives with me, she's like, you stop coming to me and ask for money. You're trying to drain my bank account. I say, yeah, you got a lot of share lah. So anyway, yeah, I think that's one point I like to share with us. I think it is a very volatile world, changing at a faster and faster speed. Besides the organizations that we work with or we're wanting to start up, just always remember that we have that personal agency as well, that we can always do something to meet the immediate needs. And even though, for example, like I said, DOT it's not meant to give financial handouts. Yeah, we can still navigate it somehow and meet people where they are at. So my team said to me, Fannie, if people don't have food on the table today, you think they are in the right space of mind to say, I want to attend a job readiness preparation program today, like I'm hungry, but hey, let's go for some upskilling. Do you think it's possible? So they challenged me. And that's when, we kicked everything into action. Then we started to get laptops, because even though it's not so much for the women, our mission is for women, but hey, we realized that women have children who need to do home-based learning, and they can't do it if they have no laptops, and it will affect the mother and etc. So understanding that, support is holistic. It might not fall within your so-called scope, but hey, sometimes it's worthwhile to just do it.
I think the key point that you shared was really that at the individual level, we can do something. At the organization level, we can do different kinds of things. And of course, at the agency and the national level, they will have different responsibilities too. And it's about being creative about what can we do at each level. So Fannie, there's also a question for you about being selective with stakeholders. So how do you manage or select the stakeholders, whether it is the employers, the donors, the volunteers, or the service providers? And Sam or Amin and Joel, if you are also having your own ways to choose the stakeholders that you want to work with, right? Please add to the conversation.
Okay, so I must say to qualify that it took us time to learn as well. But I think when we put the women, at least that's our target beneficiary group, right? When we put the women at the center, it helps a lot in our decision making. So we always remind ourselves that we are not a HR agency. I mean, I'm not paid by employers to put people to their jobs. So I got to find things that works for the women. But having said that, we are a charity. We are accountable to like public funds and stuff like that. So it's understanding my role, stewarding the organization and sustaining it, and also putting the women's needs like at the forefront. When we are in this mind space, it helps with those decision making. Yeah, so with volunteers and donors and all alike. Yeah, I hope that's helpful. Maybe I can leave my contact afterwards, and yeah, we can talk in deeper if necessary to go more in depth.
Thank you very much.
Laura.
Thank you.
I think what caught my attention is Fannie's word of mind space, and I start thinking back, how do we define what this space is for our own work? Yeah, so basically really going back to I think the layman term is mission vision. Yeah, so if I am clear who we are serving and what is the intended outcome we really want for in my case the children, the teachers, then that helps us set the criteria for selecting people. And I think honestly, it's a little bit of having to go and bang the wall on our own first. Yeah, because there are also times where we get in the wrong facilitators, we work with teachers just to test it out. And it's only upon testing out, then we prove to ourselves that actually this is somebody that really I want to work with, I want to put effort in. Or these are people that actually, if I work anymore, then more white hair, then I say no lah, cannot lah. Yeah, because there's also so much energy and time we have, and I want to channel this more effectively to people who see the same driven cause and things like that. Yeah, so that's for my side of the 2 cents.
Sorry, can I quickly add one point? I must say that empathy, so I mentioned about putting women at the forefront, but I think it's also very important for us to apply that to any stakeholders that we meet. So for example, employers, sometimes if nowadays the gender discrimination, workplace harassment, all these like surveys going on, right? So it's quite hyped up. Sometimes people may not know that asking certain things is considered gender discrimination now, like, oh, how many kids are you planning to have? Like for a woman, it's like, hey, what does that matter to my interview? But it I think one thing is important for us to also suspend judgment. Perhaps that employer was just thinking, oh, maybe I can support you better, create a different schedule for you. I don't know. But also, even if they ask for the sake of the operational, their own mind space of making sure things are running smoothly, perhaps there's room for education. So I think empathy needs to be practiced not just with target beneficiaries. It's also for the whole of society, believing that everybody wants to do better. It's just maybe don't know how, don't know when, or don't know what kind of thing. So yeah, education actually goes all around.
Thanks, Fannie.
If I could share, I think what helped in my decision in deciding on the stakeholders that we work with. For example, that project that we did with AIC, I took the initiative or effort to like document down like the entire process of how my stakeholders, which were my the artists that I trained, how they were involved in that project and how it like sort of like benefited them. So like at the end of that, like I would like speak to the family or themselves as well of like, how like be it like it helped them financially, or also like at the same time, I think like for a couple of them, it was like sort of like it helped them like, oh, okay, I'm capable of like doing a certain job or something like that. So I think like if you like document and like, gather feedback from those stakeholders or beneficiaries, it does kind of help like to make your decision on who you want to work with. Yeah, so yeah. Back then like I like sort of like all over the place. So but now I think being focused on like who do you really want to like, reach out to makes you more you'll be more steadfast in your work lah, and like what's your vision and what you want to like achieve at the end of the day or at the end of the year, that kind of thing. Yeah. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Amin. So we're coming to the end of the time that we have with one another. And I was thinking to close up this morning because we talked about so many different things, right? I have 2 questions and I'll just throw it out there first. What will you tell someone who is curious about your type of work or your type of organization and they are preparing to enter? What is the advice you would give to them or the questions you will offer them?
We can answer already, right? Okay, I share. I think maybe it's an occupational hazard, right? That I often try to ask questions rather than give advice. And I think actually recently got quite a few number of friends ask me whether how do they be a certified coach and what's the route there. And some of the question I ask them is what kind of profile or demographic do they want to serve? What do they want to get out of it? And then after that, chart the possible roadmap based on what they want to do. Because there's a wide audience and there's different kind of people they can serve. And even for a specific age group or demographic, there's also different kind of goals. Relationship, performance, blah, blah, blah. So I think the questions are asked if someone is interested. I can't say the question here, but the type of question is to give them more clarity on why they want to enter, to help them to be more aware of what's the reason they want to enter, and to prepare them to go straight to it and to develop in that track.
Thanks, Joe. This one like $1 million question. Okay, I asked Sam is ready.
I don't have an answer. What I have is, I think back to why when I was offered this opportunity, my boss asked me, "Do you want this?" And like what Joel said, he asked me a whole series of questions, and what I found was helpful and that helped me chose was, do I see myself in this? And going back to because what I believe in is what I do must have joy. I must have joy in it. The commitment that comes with it, and whether this passion can last me through. Because passion really is being a willing sufferer of the work that I choose, lah. Yeah. So if you feel that all this is a yes for you, like you can find joy in it, you can see yourself committed to it, and you want to be that willing sufferer for this passion that you have, I think then that would be a good starting space for you to say, I want to step into this and do this work. Yeah.
Mine is similar to Sam. I actually have a personal experience. Remember, so I shared with you, like I was a bit poor at one point. So I was doing part-time hours with Dot lah, and Dot was a smaller outfit then. So, the pay was really like a bit dismal. But then I took another part-time job, and it was with my ex-company who looked at me up to, because they wanted to start a training outfit. And then they got me in as one of the core team members to sort of contribute to develop the content and all of that. So I remember that it was very hard to juggle because my kids were still very young back then, and I was still a stay-home mom lah. So then with all of these 3 things, after 6 months, I decided, I think I'm not doing, I didn't feel that I was doing a good job on I was giving enough, for both sides. And I felt it was a little unfair, although both sides also felt like I'm doing well. So they're like, no, you can continue, But anyway, I made quite a firm decision thinking I need to let one go. And I remember asking myself this question: if I could afford it, which organization would I work for free? And I remember it was a very clear answer for me. I thought, okay, so then I let go of the other opportunity, which is my previous company, which I actually have 6 years of relationship with prior to joining Dot. But it was interesting that my answer was, I will be willing to work in Dot for free. I'm paid, guys. So don't think that, I'm not such a noble volunteer ED. But back then, that was what helped me decide that I would choose Dot, right? The other thing, so-called an advice, actually it's not really an advice, it's a story. Advice in the form of a story. Maybe you all have heard of the giving tree. The traditional one is where the giving tree, I can see Mahesh nodding his head. So yeah, the giving tree where they got chopped down, like first give apple first, everything, then after that, they left with a stump. There is actually a revised version, a modernized version, that the tree learned to set boundaries, and then the tree learned to say no. And then finally, you can see that the tree actually, continue bearing fruit in service of other people. So I actually thought that was a fantastic story, and I think it's one that for us in the social sector to really contemplate on and practice to take care of ourselves as well, because this is going to be a long haul, and we should continue staying alive, literally staying alive. Don't kill ourselves in the process. All right.
Thanks, Fannie. Amin, what questions might you ask someone who is curious about your work, or what helpful suggestions might you offer them?
I I think Fannie, when she shared about the giving tree, wow, I can remember back then performing. I mean, like for doing, I think, giving tree for a English lead performance or something like that. So, well, I didn't know they had a revised version for that. That's pretty cool. Yeah, but if I could share my thoughts, I think it's a long and hard journey of a lot of, like, I would say, figuring things out and like trying different things to see what works for you, or for the social enterprise. So I think you lose a lot of like sleep, and maybe you get like burnout sometimes. Yeah, and I think what really helped for me is, like, the people around me lah. Yeah, the people around me, and like, sharing your struggles, and like how you, like, I would say, do do work that is purposeful. And I think, like, whenever, like, when I like teach a class, that sort of like motivates me to, like, oh, okay, this is what I truly want to do, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think just I try my best to keep at it lah. Yeah. So yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, thank you to all four of you for being so real with us today. I think the behind the scenes perspectives, the hard knocks, and also the deep joys that you have, it's not something that people can easily get. So thank you for pouring out with us. And we hope that it has been a really meaningful time that you spent with us.